Welcome back to another episode of the NABC Guardians of the Game podcast. I'm your host, Tim Doyle, alongside longtime, and I mean longtime, Richmond head coach Chris Mooney. Has it hit you yet? Have you sat down, maybe over a glass of bourbon, and said, oh my God, we just beat Kentucky at Kentucky?
Well, minus the bourbon, although there was plenty available, obviously, in Lexington. It's really significant. You know, we were kind of talking about it as a coaching staff on the flight back. Like, you know, you can usually name their losses or their non-conference losses. You know, and so really significant. Great accomplishment for our guys, and hopefully a sign of things to come.
You know, let's be honest, last couple of years, and I called games 3-4 years ago, and your teams were struggling. But when you looked at those rosters, you knew they were young. What was that like as a head coach on the sidelines? Because I worked with Gene Katie, the old Purdue coach, bad comb over, but he did give a cash gift at my wedding, coach. And he told me that he felt like he was going to get fired after every single season. And meanwhile, the guy was like Big Ten Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, but he always had that fear. Did that start to honestly creep in your head?
Well, I mean, I think every coach operates, like that to a certain degree. And I just think that when you've been in here long enough, I remember one of my early years at Richmond, we had a young team, and we went to play a game against a very good team, and the coach came up and said how much he liked our team, but that we're young and it's going to take some time. And, this was right before the game. And I kind of thought like, hey, we're gonna win today, lost by 25. And so you realize that even when you're talented, besides the Duke, Kentucky elite one and done level talent, it's just hard. There's a lot to learn. There's strength to add, and then dealing with the ups and downs of each game, each practice, each film session is takes a little bit of time. So. I wouldn't say I was worried necessarily any more than every coach is all the time.
You had a pretty amazing career at Princeton. I went through the numbers. I saw multiple seasons, not just one. 50% from the field, 40% from three. And now I'm kind of dragging the mouse over, looking at the free throw percentage for Coach Mooney. And I was actually disappointed. It kind of hovered between the field goal percentage and the three-point percentage. So close to a 50, 40, 90 season at Princeton, playing for the legendary Coach Carrill. What's maybe the biggest lessons that you took from Coach Carrill?
Well, I mean, playing at Princeton for Coach Carrill's, by far the most important thing that ever happened in my life. It just, so lucky that he ran a style of play that was really interested in me playing there and, being able to go there and graduate and play for his teams. But, what I would say is we've always played a really good schedule, and we had some great wins out of conference, and we're very competitive. And I think that, the biggest thing was, and he wasn't much of a quotes guy or, quotes on your shorts or on the locker room walls, that really would have irritated him. But it was such a strong belief in what we were doing that he wasn't worried. We played UNLV as, the defending national champs with Augman and Larry Johnson, and North Carolina State and South Carolina. And, we tried to go out there and play everybody as a school. And we never felt like we were this little Ivy League school. Even though he was tough and demanding and, he wasn't pumping you up all the time saying how great you could be. But here we were, everything we were doing was showing that, hey, we're good enough to be at this level and compete. And I think that feeling was really important to all of us. And I feel like that is something that I've always kept in my gut in terms of coaching. Like, no matter what, like we're going to go out there and try to be great. And I think I got that from Coach Carrill, even though if you had played a recording from the practice, it wouldn't have sounded like he thought that.
You and I are both part of the Princeton family, right? It was Coach Carrill, and then there's been so many different branches of it. I played for Bill Carmody at Northwestern. Obviously, yourself and Joe Scott and John Thompson III, and now Mitch Henderson and Brian Earl. It's really kind of broken away, and the branches are getting longer and longer. Give me two-part question. Give me the best part about being a part of the Princeton family.
Well, the best part is, I learned this too at Princeton. When Coach Carrill, when we would have recruits visit, it was as much of Coach Carrill and the players on the team evaluating the guy as it was the guy deciding if he wanted to come to Princeton. And if there was a guy who acted the wrong way or didn't fit in, Coach stopped recruiting him, and so that was, again, when you're going through it, you just figure it's like that at every school, and I'm sure it's not. But what that did is all the guys are such good guys, John Thompson is a great guy. He's a son of a Hall of Fame coach himself, but is a great guy. Joe gave me such an incredible opportunity being an assistant at Air Force, Mike Brennan at American. These guys are really, really good guys. And especially when you played for Coach Carrill and Coach Carmody, you checked your ego pretty early in your career. And it was just beaten out of you. And then you just acted appropriately after that. And so I feel like all of those guys, Sidney Johnson, who I'm close with, I just feel like all of those guys are such good guys who love basketball, love their experience in college, and then go on and try to bring that to their team. So that's the best part, is the camaraderie of the former players.
I'm going to get back to the second part of my question, but I have to tell a quick story. Bill Carmody used to line us up on the bench, right? It was every guy sat there, and I used to call it the State of the Union, because he would go every single guy down the line and basically tell you a pro and maybe 10 cons about your game. Like, he'd be like, Doyle, he's like, you really can't make an open shot. I think you drink too much, but we need you out there because you can make things happen on the court and you're a really good passer. And I was like, damn. I remember one time he was like, Doyle, you got a fifth year coming up. Just go work in Wall Street. You're going to make a lot of money. Like, don't come back. Like, I was like, coach, you're playing Iowa. Like, I'm guarding a guy who's going to be like the NBA next year. Like, is this supposed to be motivating me? But you're right. It was kind of and I'm sure Coach Carrill, did he steal that from Coach Carrill at all?
Yeah. So we would call that going down the line. And actually we would do it. Yeah. Like 3-4 times a week. And it would be, so we would go out to the court and get loose and warm up for 20 minutes shooting. And then he would say, coach would say, "Oh, come on over here, fellas." And we'd sit down on the bench, and that would take 20 to 30 minutes. Then we would go pop into practice as if we had just been warm. And those were harsh. I mean, those were rough. I could probably quote a few of them, line by line, because they were tough. I mean, nobody was spared. And it was pretty colorful.
I didn't think we were going to go down this path as another therapy session. As the first episode with Roy Williams, we were telling about how we should have told our dads we loved each other. But I love that. Now, I'm old school. My dad's a bartender. I know that your dad drove a bus. Like, we have that kind of old school mentality. We talked about the coaching tree now. Yourself, can you do that to kids now? Line them up like you called, or the State of the Union as I called it, and go guy by guy? Because I like to coach because at least I knew where I stood. I may not have liked it, but at least I knew where I stood. Can you do that to the kids now?
So I would say, yeah. And I think I remember when I was being recruited, I wasn't, I had plenty of offers, and I used to ask the coach recruiting me, home visits were big back in the day. And I would ask them, hey, after they talked, I said, what's my biggest weakness, and some other kind of question. And when Coach Carrill came to see me, we went back in one of the rooms at the high school, and he said, well, this is before anybody spoke. He said, well, you're awfully slow. You don't do all that much to help anybody. And it was about 10 minutes of just ripping me. And I loved it. I mean, I decided I was going there that day. And so today, I do think you can be honest. I think, if you said the things in the way Coach Carrill said them, that'd be your last day, but I think you can be honest, but it has to be established in the recruiting. So if you're dishonest in recruiting, and most coaches probably exaggerate what could be, and then all of a sudden you're harsh, that's difficult for anybody to take in any era. I think if you're honest in the recruiting, honest in the summer, honest, I think then you have a chance to, you can still do it. But I don't think you couldn't be nearly as colorful as Coach Carrill was.
You coached at so many different levels, at so many different types of school too. You were at high school, Division III, a service academy, and now you've been at Richmond since 1864, it feels like. Of all the places, where do you think you gained the most coaching experience? Was it being a head coach, or did you learn the most as an assistant or at a particular school?
Yeah, so I would say probably the high school, because that's where I was first. And I think, in college, all my notebooks had, a million diagrams on each of the pages, and this is what I would do here. And then you get the job and you realize, boy, that's only a few minutes a day. My doodles are only a few minutes a day. It's all these other things that you have to manage. Players and parents and your administration and the gym time with the volleyball team. And, we wouldn't have a practice schedule. And I also didn't let the parents in the gym. So here they are, we're practicing for 3.5 hours. And the parents are outside in the car for an hour and a half because I was locking the doors. And so you just had to learn, like, hey, why don't you just plan practice and be organized and develop an organization for the whole program. And so that was really something that was incredibly valuable. And coaching and talking to guys and building relationships, that's universal from middle school through college. That more people are interested and the pay is more and the pressure's higher. That's different. But the coaching aspect of it is the same. And so it was really great for me to learn. I had an incredible athletic director, Frank Giovanizzi at Lansdale Catholic High School. And it was incredible for me to learn while he was helping to protect me, from parents and the administration. And he was trying to help guide me through it. And that was really valuable.
Yeah, I feel like you ripped a page or two from Gene Hackman and Hoosiers. You were like, all right, we're going to throw 5 passes. You're out of here. I was just watching that. When you get up early with your kids and that movie happened to be on, right. And just the opening credits, there's like a car driving through like the fields. And he looked over at me and just like tears are running down my face. Like, he's like, is everything okay? I go, I'm really sorry. This movie means a lot to me. Is there a movie that maybe means that much to you, sports wise, that you watch and it still like ignites that emotion?
Sure. Well, all the Rockies, since I'm from Philadelphia.
Hold on. But before you go, I need the list though, because there's been a lot of them made. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. We did not talk about this beforehand. Give me the top 3, because we all know that Rocky V should have never been made. Right. Everyone, that's universal. Everyone agrees on that. Rocky V should have never been made. So give me your top 3 Rockies.
So I think Rocky, okay.
Yeah.
Rocky, for people listening who don't know, won the Academy Award.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. Now, it's a pretty, pretty gray look at Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's slow. Tough. It's slow too. It's a slow movie. Yeah,
very slow. And so I think Rocky 2 is my favorite. Probably.
Yes, I agree. That's my favorite as well.
I love Rock. So I would say 2, 1, and 3. I loved Clubber Lang as a character. And Rocky 4, he kind of brought an end to the Cold War. If you guys can change, and I can change. Yeah,
it's actually it's the only. Yeah, it was significant. Yeah, it was, and also I learned how to speak Russian at a young age. I just always wondered why Drago's manager wasn't motivating him more throughout the fight, because when he motivated him, he always seemed to punch a little bit harder. But yeah I had 4 second Rocky 3, third. I have Rocky 1 a little bit lower. It's just a little too slow for me. Rocky 2, another tearjerker with the speech at the end, right? Adrian almost died. I mean, just emotions of flowing on a Saturday morning in the Doyle household when any Rocky is on.
When Adrian comes out of the coma, I mean, really, just too much. Too much.
It is. I'll start banging out push-ups right away. No doubt about it. The Princeton offense, I loved it because I couldn't shoot and I was more of a playmaker. John Thompson III got to a Final Four. Other coaches don't love that. We play a certain style. Sometimes it scares away recruits. What's your overall thought on the Princeton offense?
So I would think that, one, since it's been labeled like that, and it came about Princeton, Georgetown in '89. And Coach Carrill, so many great teams. And by that time, Princeton, if anybody was coaching Princeton and the other team was Georgetown, you'd slow down. You'd slow down and make sure you got a great shot and try to utilize the clock to your advantage. And because Princeton was on a few times a year, they were, they didn't show the Princeton Dartmouth game. They showed the Princeton North Carolina game. And so I think it got this idea. It was beloved and respected by coaches. But most importantly, recruits weren't so sure about it because they thought it was too much of a system. In reality, I think it's a lot different. I think it gives you freedom because you're making the decisions. There are not a lot of plays called. It's more of making the decision that you see fit. Now, when we were at practice at Princeton, we played and there were fast breaks and we were moving and playing. When we got in the game, there was a strict, we were really going to try not to turn the ball over. We're going to try to take a great shot. I feel like our team has played very fast here the last certainly couple of years. And that hasn't changed the spacing of the guys on the court or the decision-making. And we get cuts for layups. So I think it's great. I think all of the tenets of it, being able to dribble, pass, and shoot, helping the next player, cutting so that the other guy can get open, kind of sacrificing yourself a little bit. Those are still really strong for us. And I think they're great and can be successful in any kind of, at any level. And I love it, but I wouldn't say that my opinion or my definition of the Princeton offense might be a lot different than someone else's.
You've been the head coach there at Richmond. Crazy to think 16 seasons. So even when I was in college, you were the coach there. I mean, I remember your Air Force teams with Welsh and, guys cutting out of it was like, talk about military guys running the offense. Yeah. Like they were like millimeters. It was like, sir, yes, sir. Like they were doing things the exact. Northwestern used to watch Air Force to learn how to run the offense because those guys were like military guys. They're going to get it right when they pop out on point screen away. Has this been your most challenging season from maybe a mental standpoint, keeping your guys motivated, keeping in contact with them, doing Zoom calls? You got kids' toys behind you. No offense to you. I wouldn't say it's like an ideal studio you have right now, but you want to know something? Everyone's just used to it. Like there's socks in the background. Heck, I could be in my underwear right now. You have no idea. But as far as your kids, like, what's it been like to talk to them, communicate with them? Has this been like a crazy year?
Yeah, very much so. Thank God for Zoom and technology and whatnot. But yeah, I think that it's difficult and frustrating and inconsistent. We were in Kentucky for the Bluegrass Showcase, and the rules are slightly different there in terms of the testing and the protocols than they are when we get back to Virginia. And like the tournament in Connecticut, if there's a close contact within 6 feet, the next question they ask is, were you wearing a mask? If you were, then that contact is void. In Virginia, if there's a close contact within 6 feet, the mask doesn't matter. That question's not asked. So that's difficult for everybody. And I imagine it's really difficult for someone who's in college. That's just something where you're experiencing freedom. And, as an athlete, you have tons of responsibilities, but you still have freedom. And that's something that's challenging for sure. And so being able to be in touch with the guys, and we have an older team, and having good relationships with them has meant the world, because it would be really difficult if it was all new guys.
Yeah, a young team, right? Getting those guys all on the same page, or a bunch of freshmen. Yeah, I mean, college can be a lot for anyone. Before, you and I came on air last night, I was reading a story about one of your managers, a female manager whose father took his life, and the impact you had on her. And we talked about crying during Rockies and stuff. I was like choking up during that. You were a young coach at the time. I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tim. So, we had a manager named Robin, who was a really, really great kid. And, she's a mom now with 3 children herself, and still lives in the Richmond area. And so Robin's parents had come from South Africa, and they were very successful. Father was a very successful businessman. They lived in a beautiful house in Connecticut. And and I had met them a few times and became close with Robin's mom. But we came in one day, and we had gotten a message that something had happened. And I think we didn't know exactly. I think Robin probably really strongly suspected, but we didn't know exactly. So I flew up there with her to go home. And, later in that semester, she was really struggling. And, her roommates are going about the business of college and having fun and worrying about, mindless, silly things. And here she is trying to deal with that. So she came and stayed with my wife and myself. We didn't have kids at the time, for months, just so she could, be surrounded by a little bit more support. And we remained very close. And, a couple years later, she met a guy, fell in love, and they decided to get married. And she asked me to walk her down the aisle. So really, really cool and great stuff. And, that was something that was, sometimes as a coach, you lose sight of how much of an impact you can have. And it's just about the wins and losses in the next practice. And that kind of brought it to light for me.
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing story. I think that's extremely well said. I mean, right? I can remember the Bill Carmody State of the Union. That was 15 years ago, right? You're going back 30 years when you played. Sorry to call you old right there, but you remember like exactly what Coach Carrill said to you in the back room of your high school. Like the impact you guys do have at the coaching level on managers, on players is, you're right. That's why when I read that story, and now that I have kids, I'm just like, I think that was a pretty amazing thing that you did, flying up with her and then walking her down the aisle. Were you nervous? Because I know the most nervous I ever was when Darren Williams took me one-on-one at the Champagne. But besides from that, all right, I was really nervous. When I got on my knee and asked my wife, when I proposed to her, that was like the most nerve-wracking thing. I've never been more nervous in my whole life. When you walked it down the aisle, did it feel natural, or were you nervous?
I was nervous. I was really overwhelmed when she asked me. I think they invited us to breakfast or lunch, and she had asked me, and I was really overwhelmed. By the time I was walking down the aisle, I felt like I had it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I felt like I had it down pat, but I was nervous, and it was and by that point we had our older son Danny, so it was it was just kind of like, been a father for 9 months, and here I am walking someone down the aisle. So I was nervous, really overcome. It was a great thing.
It's an amazing story. We appreciate your time on the podcast. I told you Gene Katie came to my wedding. All right, cash gift. Got to ask you for Robin's wedding. Now, Southern rules are different. We're East Coast guys, so I already know your answer. Did you go cash or did you go gift for the wedding?
Can I ask, is that true that Gene Katie went to your wedding?
100%. And how about this? The day before my wedding, he calls me up. He's like, Timmy, I need you to pick me up from the airport, right? So I got to pick him up. Like, the day before you get married, you got like stuff to do. But out of respect for him, I was like, all right, coach, I picked him up. Like I drove him and his girlfriend down to the city. He danced. I sat him at a table with like a couple of like unusual suspects. Like my uncle, like did some time in the pen, like, and he had a blast. Like, yes, he was at my wedding and he didn't give cash gifts. So I got to ask you, I put you on the spot. Don't deflect the question. Cash or gift?
We gave a gift. My wife was in charge of it. We gave a gift.
Yeah.
But I was at Gene Katie's wedding because he was married.
That's right.
On the Nike trip in Hawaii about 8 to 10 years ago. And he was married like on the 18th green of this immaculate golf course overlooking the Pacific. And all of the guests on the trip were there and part of the wedding party.
Awesome.
You know what? That's the circle of life, right?
That is the circle of life. You know what Gene Katie is too? He's a bomb caller. Like if he doesn't get you, he'll call you 5 or 6 times in a row. And then you're just like, I got to answer. Like I can't keep avoiding him. Great dude. And you're an awesome dude as well. Thank you so much for your time, Coach. That was great today. It's head coach Chris Mooney for the University of Richmond, just knocked off Kentucky. Big things ahead with a veteran team this year in the Atlantic 10. Thanks so much for tuning into the NABC Guardians of the Game podcast. I'm Tim Doyle. I will be back soon with some more great stories from some of the great coaches across the country.